All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another installment of my video blog series. In this video, I want to try and answer a question that somebody asked me recently about martial arts and meditation. Specifically, it was about, it came from Gabriel in California, and he was asking me about would he be able to learn the meditation or more about meditation along with the martial arts, especially Enriching. And my answer to him was that as far as Enriching goes, you can't get away from it. And so he wanted to hear more about that, but we didn't have time to finish up our conversation, so I'm following up by video with that. So, like I said, now of course my background, as you guys know, is from Enriching, but if you follow this approach, you can turn any martial arts practice into a type of meditation practice. So in Chinese martial arts, they talk a lot about tingjin, which means like a listening power, listening energy. And so that's the most important fundamental point in the beginning, is to kind of approach it from this idea of tingjin, or listening power. The idea is that you're listening to your opponent. You know, usually they're talking about through touch. That's why with a lot of Chinese martial arts, they're doing like a lot of sticky hand, spinning hand. You know, sometimes they call it like bridge hands, push hands, all different kind of, you know, partner-based exercises that all deal with touch. And so with like Enriching in particular, you know, my Sifu talks about that we're training martial arts as a tool and not as a goal. So I think I may have talked about this before in some of my other video blog posts, where, you know, if you're training martial arts as a goal, you know, so this could be like, for a point of view, talking about like the reality-based self-defense guys, anybody that's training specifically for sport competition. At least during that period, they're only worried about what's going to work, like on the street or in the ring. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, that's neither here nor there. But in this case, when we're talking about training martial arts as a tool, you know, or going back to training martial arts as a goal, it means like what you're doing is narrowing the focus down more and more, like I said, to only what's going to work on the street or in the ring. So you may or may not get much like personal development out of that. We could talk about like self-cultivation. If you're training martial arts as a tool, it will open up rather than narrow down to the focus of application. We're going to start from application, you could say, and use that as a tool to observe. And once you start using as a tool to observe, is when it starts to become a kind of concentration practice or concentration type meditation. So remember what I was saying about tingjin, the listening power. So with the tingjin, the listening power is listening, is observing, right? So if you think about it in a certain sense, you know, it's like sometimes I say like you are the center of the universe, but it's the center of your universe. In other words, like, because you are the center of your own experience. Because we can't experience anything beyond our, what we call like the sense doors. So they talk about 6 sense doors. So there's obviously like eyesight, hearing, smell, taste, physical touch, and body feel, and then also the mental state, right? Of ideas and thoughts that produce feeling. So, we never really experience directly anything beyond our own body. If you think about it, like even, and the problem is sight, because we're very visual creatures as people, that, we see the depth of space, but we don't actually experience it directly. We still experience it in our own body. It's the light that's hitting, our cells, the rods and the cones in our eye. The light is coming to our eye, and then our brain interprets the signal that those cells send to the brain. And we interpret that as space, that visual experience, but there's still a point of contact with our own body. So this point of contact is important. I'll come back to it. But the same thing like with hearing. It seems as though we're hearing things from far away, which, we are, but it's the vibrations that are traveling through space, through the air, that are landing on our eardrum. It stimulates the eardrum that sends a message to the brain. So again, there's a physical point of contact in our body with that sense door. Then as we get more narrowed down, like touch and taste, because those is more obviously that we have to experience that physically, so that doesn't quite tie in so much to the illusion of, that we're experiencing, something that's outside of our own body. In other words, it's beyond the sense doors. And then smell, same thing. And then the mental state is obviously very much like inward, you can say. But with all of these things, like I said, there's that point of contact there. And so, like my Sifu, Grandmaster Sam Chim, he says, like, you can't forget yourself to pay attention to others. This is going back to like that Ting Jin, that listening power. Because we're listening to or you could say you're listening to your opponent or your partner, if you're a training partner. But like he said, you can't forget yourself to pay attention to others, because you have to stick the attention to all those sense doors, because that's where you're really experiencing or the information, I guess you can say. Or he says you must feel yourself being touched, not someone touching you. And those two sound like the same, because in both cases you know that you're being touched. But in the first case, where you feel yourself being touched, the attention is still on the sense door. But a lot of times we tend to get intent on trying to pay attention to something, and so we sort of project the attention outward rather than keeping it where it belongs, which is on the sense door. Anytime that you have attention on the sense door is, you could say, is concentration. At the very least, you can say that you're present and observing. Now, I have another video, an older video. I want to redo it for the new approach with my channel, a little bit more upscale, but where I talk about how you're applying Zen to martial arts. And if you want to watch that video where I go into a little bit more depth on this, is how your Zen is applying to martial arts, go ahead and look at the video description below, or click the eye up there for links, and I'll be sure to include those in the iCards. But like I said, it's you could say Zen in a nutshell is like four bullet points: to be present, to observe. From observing, you recognize. From recognize, you know. All right, that's sort of like how it works. And so I'm getting a little bit off my original point, because I was talking about, so I'm observing the sense doors. Anytime you're observing the sense door is meditation, right? At least you could say it's a concentration practice. It's not like Vipassana, where it's going to develop some insight or wisdom from it. But before you can develop insight, you have to have concentration first. With enough concentration, to hold the attention on the sense door long enough to be able to penetrate. Like the vipassana aspect, like the wisdom is coming from being able to penetrate into the essence of the moment, or to recognize the suchness, is how like Myseef likes to talk about it. Recognizing the suchness feel, or things as they are as such. That's the wisdom. But before you can get there, like I say, you have to have enough concentration to be able to hold your attention on the sense doors long enough so that you can observe clearly enough. Okay? So with this in mind then, now going back to what I was saying, like Ting Jin, like Ting is just one type of observation power. Mostly is dealing with touch, because it was for martial arts. So it's touch because of the body, and a lot more on sight, right? Because you're going to, later on, you're observing the timing and the spacing. So that's all really it comes down to, is how you approach these kind of things. The same two kind of training, right? But one with the mind in the present moment to observe, like, how it works, or why it works that way, or how it feels, rather than just training like with repetition to turn it into some kind of habit or a conditioned reflex. Habits and conditioned reflex is exactly the opposite of the approach that we're after. Like I said, where that's because it's not conscious, right? It's like an unconscious reflexive action. So coming back to what I was talking about with Ting Jin, the listening power as a type of concentration practice, because there's a point of contact usually with a partner, which with Ili Chun is where we start training the spinning hands, we start training the sticky hands. And then on that point of contact, there's some pressure, right? Now, remember what I was saying that about the suchness. So, with the right approach to make your martial arts practice like a meditation kind of practice, is not to train on the habit. It's only to train into recognize and realize what's already there. So, for instance, going back to this point of contact, with a physical point of contact, there's always some pressure there, right? And this is not something that we're trying to create. It's something that's already there, right? I touch you, there's pressure there. Gravity is acting on your body all the time, is acting on my body right now, that is holding me down into this bench. So between the weight of my body and the bench, there's some pressure that's already there, right? It's not something that I'm trying to create. So all I need to do then is bring my attention to it to observe, like, where's the pressure. Same thing with a point of contact with an opponent. You're going to observe that point of contact to see how the pressure is. Because from the point of contact, we'll have like some surface area. If it has some surface area, no matter how small, it has a center. Have a center, it has a cross. And so that cross, it gives 4 quarters. So on one side you could say is yin, on the other is yang, right? And on both sides of the cross, that usually like 1 quarter will be slightly more than all the other quarters. That is telling you what to do, telling you where to go already. So like everything that you need is already right there, but you don't know how to pay attention to it. You don't know how to observe, right? So and I think I've talked a bit before about how, like, when we're training, we want our martial art to be like water, right? Because water is a good analogy, sort of, for that Zen mind, where they talk about like no mind, right? Like water has no mind, but it still flows, right? Moves from high to low. If it's empty, it just flows through. Where there's an obstacle, it flows around until it has enough power that it doesn't need to flow around. It can just sweep off, right? It has enough power. So if our martial art is like that, it's like we're not based on like the thinking mind, right? Based on being present, based on observing that point of contact. to see where the pressure is that tells us it's full or empty. Full, I flow around. Empty, just flow in other words, just hit. But if I have enough power, full or empty, doesn't matter, I can just sweep it off, right? And how do I know if I have enough power? The point of contact tells you from observing. Like, you be present, you observe that point of contact. From observing, you'll recognize what the pressure is, or you could say like what the pressure is telling you. Tell you to flow around, tell you to flow in, or just sweep it off. So I think I'm going to wrap it up there. That's kind of in a nutshell, at least like the basic approach of how you can make your martial arts practice into a legit concentration kind of meditation practice. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that one. If you like that, go ahead and look at the video description below, or click the eye up there for links to the rest of the videos in my video blog series. If you guys have any more questions, if that you'd like me to talk about some more of this kind of stuff, drop me a comment and let me know. Thumbs up are always appreciated. Comments are always appreciated. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys next time.